It was a hot afternoon in late July, year 2010, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. Emily stood barefoot on the front porch of their modest house in Peoria, Illinois, sweat clinging to her arms, watching as her husband, Dave, loaded the last suitcase into the back of his silver SUV. He didn't look back. Not even once. She had asked him what was going on, why he was packing, why he looked so cold lately. But deep down, she already knew. It wasn't just the weight. It was the years of being overlooked, of giving too much and receiving too little. Emily had been a good wife. She cooked, cleaned, raised their 2 boys, and never once asked for more than she thought she deserved. And maybe that was the problem. Somewhere along the way, she forgot to ask for respect, for value, for a real place in her own story. Dave finally broke the silence. Emily, I can't do this anymore. I met someone. She makes me feel alive. And honestly, I need someone who takes better care of herself. The words were sharp, cruel. They landed like punches. Emily froze. Her heart didn't just break, it shattered. She had never felt so small in her life. At over 270 lbs, she already felt invisible in most rooms. Now she was being told, with zero hesitation, that she wasn't good enough to be loved anymore. I gave you everything, she whispered, her voice cracking. Dave shrugged. You gave me what you could, but I want more now. I want someone who brings excitement, someone who doesn't look tired all the time. The SUV door slammed shut. Then he was gone. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, pretending not to stare. Emily turned around slowly and walked back inside the house that now felt empty, even though it was still full of furniture, toys, and memories. The silence was unbearable. That night, as the kids slept and the ceiling fan hummed above, Emily sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of wine and a plate of untouched spaghetti. Her appetite had disappeared, replaced with a tight ache in her chest. She looked down at her reflection in the kitchen window. Puffy eyes, red cheeks, a woman who gave everything and still lost. Her mind echoed with his words. Someone who takes better care of herself. Was she unhealthy? Maybe. Tired? Absolutely. But had she been unworthy of love, of loyalty, of commitment? That's when the guilt began to sink in. Not just sadness. Shame. She'd always been the bigger girl, even back in high school. The one who never wore shorts. The one who stayed quiet in group photos. And every time someone made a joke about her size, she'd laugh along, pretending it didn't hurt. But this wasn't a joke. This was real-life rejection. In front of her children. In her own home. The next morning, she drove to the grocery store. She needed cereal, eggs, and milk. And that's when it happened. A woman from her church spotted her in aisle 4, wearing old sweatpants and a loose hoodie. She walked over with a smirk. I heard about Dave, she said, leaning in. Honestly, Em, you should have seen it coming. Emily froze. You know, men like him, they crave, well, energy, passion. A woman who knows how to take care of herself, her health, her body. That moment, something inside Emily cracked. She didn't respond. She just stood there feeling a deep burn in her chest. Not anger. Not yet. But something else. Something heavy. Something sharp. That night she cried until her body ached. Not just because of Dave, but because she realized the truth. No one was going to save her. Not her friends. Not her neighbors. Not her church. Not even her family. She had spent her whole life being the good girl, the one who followed the rules, who never complained, who believed that if you just gave love, you'd get it back. But what did she get instead? Judgment, pity, abandonment. That was the moment Emily decided. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to chase. She was going to change, not for Dave, not for the neighbors, but for herself. She was going to find wealth in self-respect, prosperity in her peace. She was going to rebuild her life, pound by pound, choice by choice. And the next time someone looked at her and thought, she's not worth it, she'd be too far gone to even hear it. And that was just the beginning. The first Monday after Dave left felt like waking up on another planet. Emily got the boys off to school, then stood in the quiet of the kitchen, staring at the mess around her. Cereal boxes half open, sticky spots on the floor, mail piling up. She felt like a ghost walking through her own life. She walked into the bathroom, not even sure why. Maybe to splash water on her face, maybe just to look in the mirror and see if she still existed. The reflection staring back at her looked tired. Her eyes were puffy. Her hair was frizzy from the humid Illinois air. And her body? She didn't even recognize herself anymore. The scale in the corner of the room had been collecting dust for over a year. She avoided it like poison. But that morning, something shifted. She stepped on it. Slowly, held her breath. The number flashed. 278 lbs. She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she whispered to herself, "You're not broken. You're just tired. And maybe it's time to stop surviving and start living." That same day, she drove past a community center just a few blocks from downtown Peoria. A banner out front read, "Free Women's Wellness Class, every Tuesday night." Emily made a mental note. Then she drove home and cleaned the kitchen like she was scrubbing away her old life. Every crumb, every stain, gone. That Tuesday evening, at exactly 6 o'clock, Emily parked her old minivan outside the center. She almost didn't go in. She sat there, engine running, stomach in knots. But then she remembered the way Dave looked at her when he said he was leaving. That cold, judgmental stare. And she turned off the ignition and walked inside. The room was warm and smelled faintly of peppermint and lemon cleaner. A dozen women sat in a circle, different shapes, different ages. Some in yoga pants, some in jeans. No one was perfect. But they were all there, all trying. A woman named Carla led the group. She was in her 40s, strong, confident, with a kindness that felt real. She didn't preach. She just listened. And when it was Emily's turn to speak, she hesitated. "I'm Emily," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm from Peoria. I'm trying to figure out who I am now." No one judged her. No one rolled their eyes or asked about Dave. They just nodded, like they understood. That night, for the first time in years, Emily felt something different when she got back home. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But it was hope. Small, quiet hope. Like the first warm day after a long Illinois winter. She didn't change overnight. But she started moving. She walked the kids to school instead of driving. She swapped soda for water. She wrote down 3 things she was grateful for every morning. It wasn't about chasing skinny. It was about chasing health, chasing peace, chasing prosperity of the soul. Every time she wanted to quit, she thought of her boys, of the life she still had ahead of her, of the values she wanted, to show them. Not just about appearance, but about strength, about standing up after life knocks you flat. And little by little, pound by pound, Emily changed. By October, she was down 15 lbs, then 23, then 35. People started to notice. Not just the size difference, but the energy. She stood taller, spoke clearer, laughed more. Her skin had that glow you can't buy with money. It came from inside. One day she saw Dave at the grocery store. He didn't recognize her at first. He walked right past, then did a double take. Their eyes met. He looked stunned. She gave a polite nod and kept walking. She didn't owe him anything. Not a smile, not a story, not a single explanation. Emily wasn't doing this to make him regret it. She was doing this because she deserved to look in the mirror and feel rich in confidence, to walk into a room and not shrink, to breathe and feel alive. She started meal prepping on Sundays. She walked every evening while the boys rode their bikes. She picked up a part-time job at a local bookstore, her first time earning money in years. It wasn't much, but it felt like freedom. By Christmas, she had lost over 50 elobas, but more than that, she had gained herself back. And deep inside, she knew. This was only the beginning. By early spring of 2011, Peoria was soaked in gray skies and muddy sidewalks, the kind of weather that makes people want to stay in bed a little longer. But Emily? She was already on her third mile by 7 o'clock in the morning. She had a rhythm now. Wake up before the boys, throw on her old hoodie, and walk through the quiet streets with nothing but her thoughts and the sound of her sneakers hitting the pavement. Her body was changing, yes, but so was her mind. There was clarity now. Purpose. On the last Saturday of March, she stepped on the scale and saw it. 204 lbs. That was 74 pounds gone since the day Dave drove away. She stood there, tears welling up in her eyes, not just because of the number, but because she finally felt in control. Later that morning, she took the boys to a local diner. They slid into a booth, ordered pancakes and eggs, and for the first time in a long time, Emily didn't hide behind the menu. The waitress, a woman named Janice, did a double take. "Emily? Girl, you look amazing. What's your secret?" Emily smiled. "Sweat, grit, and finally giving a damn about myself." Janice laughed. "Whatever you're doing, it's working. You look like money." Emily laughed too. "I feel like wealth, not just in pounds lost, but in peace gained." The words stuck with her all day. Wealth, peace, prosperity. That night, after the boys fell asleep, Emily pulled out an old notebook and wrote 3 words across the first page. Health, values, freedom. These were her new rules. She was no longer chasing thin. She was chasing power, her prosperity. But progress wasn't always smooth. Some days the weight didn't move. Some nights she sat on the couch and stared at the old photos Dave never took down from Facebook. The ones with him and his new girlfriend, thin, blonde, forever posting about juice cleanses and couples vacations. There were times when Emily wanted to scream. Times when the pain hit so hard she couldn't breathe. But then she'd walk into her boys' room and see them sleeping. Peaceful and safe. That was her reminder. This wasn't about revenge. It was about healing. In mid-April, she got an unexpected call. Carla, the woman who ran the wellness group, had nominated Emily for a local segment on Channel 9's Peoria People Who Inspire series. At first, Emily refused. "I'm not ready," she told Carla. "You're more than ready," Carla said gently. "Your story has value. You've earned this." After a long pause, Emily agreed. A week later, she sat across from a news anchor, lights glaring, cameras rolling. She wore a simple navy blouse and jeans that actually fit for once. Her hands were shaking, but her voice didn't crack once. The anchor asked, "Emily, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?" Emily took a breath. That self-worth doesn't come from how much you weigh or who chooses to love you. It comes from knowing your own values, from treating yourself like you matter. I used to think losing weight would fix everything. But what really changed my life was realizing I had the right to be healthy, to feel joy, to chase prosperity in all parts of my life. The clip went viral locally. Friends she hadn't heard from in years sent her messages. Strangers at the grocery store stopped her to say, "You're that woman from the news." One morning, While waiting for her turn at the post office, she overheard a woman whisper to her friend, "That's Emily, the one who lost all that weight. She looks so strong now, like someone who owns her worth." Emily turned her face slightly, just enough to smile. She was no longer invisible. That night, while brushing her teeth, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her cheeks were slimmer, her eyes were brighter, and the woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She wasn't done yet, not even close. But now, she was becoming. By the time summer rolled into Illinois in 2012, the air was thick with heat and blooming jasmine. Emily had just turned 37, and for the first time in over a decade, she didn't dread her birthday. She celebrated it with her boys in the park by the river, laughing, barefoot, eating watermelon under the trees. Her weight now stood at 168 lbs. That was 110 pounds gone. But the numbers didn't define her anymore. What mattered most was how she felt. Energized, centered, and full of a kind of quiet wealth that couldn't be bought with money. She had built a new life, brick by brick. She worked full-time at the bookstore, ran a local wellness group for women in Peoria, and was even saving up to take her kids on a trip to Tennessee in the fall. It wasn't just about the body. It was about the values she lived by now, showing her kids that no matter how bad it gets, you can rise again with grit, heart, and belief in your own worth. But just when she thought the past was behind her, it came knocking. One Thursday morning, while checking emails on her break, she saw a name she hadn't read in over 2 years. It was from David Sanders. She froze. The subject line read, "Podcast interview request. Stories of resilience." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She clicked it open. "Hi, Emily. I hope you're well. I've been following your story online. You've really made waves. Local news, the wellness group, everything. It's inspiring. I've recently launched a podcast that focuses on personal growth after setbacks, and I'd love to have you as a guest. I think your journey would speak to a lot of people. Let me know if you'd be open to chatting. Best, Dave." Emily blinked at the screen. She read it twice. Then a third time. Dave, the man who told her she wasn't enough, who walked out like she was just a phase in his life. Now he wanted to put her voice on his platform. Now he wanted her story. The nerve. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the bookstore ceiling, heart pounding. Anger was there, sure, but underneath it was something else. Calm. She had no desire to scream, to curse him out, because she had something he didn't: growth. She had found her peace, her health, her prosperity, and that was the true riches of her life now. Later that evening, she brought it up to Carla after group session. "He wants to interview me," Emily said, shaking her head, "like I'm some motivational success story for him to parade around." Carla smiled gently. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." Carla looked at her for a long moment. "Well, ask yourself this. Are you doing it to be seen, or to say something that matters?" That question sat with Emily all night. She didn't want revenge. Not really. But the thought of sitting across from Dave, as the woman she had become, fully in her power, maybe that wasn't revenge. Maybe that was just truth. Maybe it was a way to show the world what healing looked like, what real prosperity meant after being tossed aside. The next morning, at 8 o'clock sharp, she replied, "Dave, thanks for the message. I'll do the interview. But I want full control over what parts are shared. My story is mine. And by the way, thank you, because when you left, I lost everything I thought I needed. But I found everything I truly deserved." Emily, she hit send. The interview was scheduled for the second Friday of June, inside a quiet studio near downtown Peoria. Emily wore a deep green blouse, simple gold earrings, and a calm, grounded smile. She walked into that room like a woman who knew who she was. Dave stood when she entered. His eyes widened, just a flicker. But she caught it. That old look, shock, regret, maybe even something like admiration. "Emily," he said, his voice soft. "You look healthy," she finished for him. "I know." She sat down across from him. No tension, no bitterness, just strength. The red light came on. And the story she told wasn't about him. It was about wealth found in healing, about values reborn through pain, about how money doesn't make you rich, but truth, dignity, and self-respect do. And he sat there, recording every word. The recording lasted 52 minutes. Emily spoke with calm conviction. Not once did she raise her voice. Not once did she speak poorly of Dave. She didn't have to. Her strength spoke for itself. When the final question came, "What would you tell your younger self, the woman you were 2 years ago?" Emily paused. Then she looked right into the camera and said, "You are not too much. You are not too late. You are enough. You always were." The room fell silent for a beat. After the recording wrapped, Dave stood awkwardly near the exit, fidgeting with his mic cables. Emily gathered her things, unfazed. He cleared his throat. I just want to say, I'm proud of you." She looked at him, measured. "You don't have to be. I'm proud of myself." That was all. No anger, no need for applause, just truth. Outside, the late June sun painted the streets of Peoria in gold. Emily walked slowly, savoring the warmth on her face, the quiet buzz of cars passing by, and the cool breeze that followed her home. The episode went live the following Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. By noon, Emily's phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages poured in from old classmates, former co-workers, and even strangers. Her story had struck something deeper, especially in women who'd felt unseen, unheard, unloved. One woman wrote, "Thank you for reminding me I can start over. I'm almost 300 lbs and thought it was too late. But your story, it gave me hope." Emily replied to every message personally. This wasn't about going viral. It was about connection, community, real change. That same week, the bookstore manager offered her a promotion to lead the store's wellness and self-growth events. It came with better hours, more responsibility, and a nice boost in money, which meant she could finally upgrade her old car that kept stalling every other week. She walked into the dealership a few days later in a fitted denim jacket, clean white sneakers, and a quiet confidence that made people take notice. The salesman barely recognized her from the time she'd come in 2 years ago, asking questions and leaving empty-handed. He smiled wide. "Looking for something practical or something fun?" She smiled back. "Both. I've earned it." The drive home in her new car was quiet, windows down, music low. The wind in her hair, she whispered to herself, This is prosperity." At dinner that night, her oldest son, Jordan, looked at her and said, "Mom, you seem happy." Emily blinked. "I am, baby, I really am." Then came an unexpected moment. On the third Saturday of July, Emily was invited to speak at a women's leadership event at Bradley University, the same school she once dreamed of attending before life and motherhood took her down another road. She stood on stage in front of nearly 200 women, students, mothers, professionals. Her story wasn't rehearsed. It didn't need to be. She talked about starting over, about choosing yourself, about reclaiming your health, your values, your voice. Midway through her speech, she noticed Dave in the back of the room. He wasn't scheduled to be there. She hadn't invited him. But there he was, alone, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on her. After the event, he approached her. Not with that smug air he used to carry, but with something almost unfamiliar. Humility. "Emily," he said, I didn't know how strong you were. I didn't see it before. I see it now." She let him finish. Then she nodded. "You didn't see it because you weren't looking. But that's not my burden anymore." He looked down, ashamed. "I was wrong." Emily took a slow breath. "Yes, you were." And then she turned and walked away. Not because she was bitter, not because she wanted him to hurt, but because she no longer needed validation from someone who never valued her in the first place. That night, alone on her porch, Emily sat in silence. The sky was painted in deep purples and soft blues. She sipped tea, wrapped in a blanket, thinking about all she had lost and everything she had gained. She no longer measured her worth in pounds or praise. She had built a life rich in self-respect, peace, and emotional wealth. She had become the woman no one saw coming. And the best part? She was just getting started. The first week of August brought a heat wave to Peoria. It was the kind of sticky, breathless weather that made the sidewalks shimmer and air conditioners hum all over town. But Emily didn't mind the heat anymore. She welcomed it. The fire outside matched the one inside her now. It had been almost exactly 2 years since Dave walked out that front door. Since then, Emily had lost 110 lbs, rebuilt her life, and found more wealth in her soul than she ever thought possible. Not just physical transformation, emotional, spiritual, financial. She was standing on her own. And that week, something happened that marked a new beginning. She got a call from a woman named Dana, who ran a mentorship program for young single mothers across Illinois. "I've heard a lot about you, Emily," Dana said over the phone. "Your story is all over the place, and these girls, they need someone real, someone who's been through it. Would you come speak at our next event?" Emily paused. She looked out the window at her boys playing in the yard, the same yard where she once cried herself to sleep sitting on that porch swing. Now she saw laughter, peace, movement. "Yes," she said. "I'd be honored." The event took place at a small community center just outside downtown Peoria. The room was modest, folding chairs, old carpeting, and lemonade on the back table. But the moment Emily stepped in, she felt the weight of it. A dozen young women looked up at her like she was someone worth listening to, and maybe, for the first time in her life, she fully believed it. She spoke with truth. She told them how it felt to be abandoned, how shame had wrapped around her like a second skin, how every pound she lost wasn't just about her body. It was about shedding the old beliefs that she wasn't worthy of love or comfort or a life full of prosperity. One girl, barely 20, raised her hand and said, "How did you stop feeling broken?" Emily smiled gently. "By remembering that my worth didn't disappear just because someone else couldn't see it. You don't lose your value because someone walks away. You just start investing that love where it really belongs, inside you." The room went quiet. And then, a soft clap. Then another. And soon, a full applause. That night, Emily sat in her car in the parking lot, tears running silently down her cheeks. Not from sadness, but from release. She had made it. She had turned pain into purpose. That was a kind of richness that no amount of money could ever buy. Later that week, Carla from the wellness group invited Emily over for tea. "You've changed a lot," Carla said, pouring chamomile into her cup. "I had to," Emily replied. "I finally understand what it means to live, not just survive." Carla smiled. "You look lighter." Emily chuckled. "I am lighter. 110 pounds to be exact." They both laughed. But then Emily grew quiet. "You know, what I think about the most?" she asked. "Not the weight, not Dave. I think about how I almost gave up on myself. how I almost settled for a life where I was always tired, always invisible. Carla nodded. But you didn't. Emily looked down at her hands. No, I didn't. That night, Emily wrote a journal entry. Something she hadn't done in months. August 3rd, 2012. I am not the woman I used to be. I am not the woman Dave left. I am not defined by my weight or my past or my pain. I am defined by my choices. And today, I choose me. By mid-August, Emily had signed on to co-author a local wellness guide for women in rural Illinois. It wouldn't make her rich, not in terms of money, but in meaning, in impact. It was priceless. Her life, once buried in sadness, now bloomed with purpose. And as summer slowly melted into September, she felt something shift deep inside. Closure. Not the kind you get from apologies or explanations, but the kind you find when you know, with absolute certainty, that you've outgrown the pain that once defined you. Emily didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to Dave, not to the world, not even to herself. She had become her own proof. By the second week of September, Peoria was painted in gold and rust. The trees began to let go, and so did Emily. She felt lighter in a different way now. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Her life was full, her days purposeful, and her nights calm. Then, one Tuesday morning, as she sipped her coffee by the window, an envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address. Cream-colored. Simple. She opened it slowly, thinking maybe it was a bill or a flyer. But it wasn't. It was a wedding invitation. David Sanders and Madison Hale request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration on Saturday, October 13th, 2012. Peoria Riverfront Pavilion. Emily stared at it, her fingers tightening around the edges. It wasn't the invite that shocked her. It was the handwritten note inside. Emily, I know it's strange to receive this, but I wanted to reach out. Madison insisted we invite you. She's followed your story and thinks it would be powerful to have you there. She says you've become a symbol of strength and grace. I agree. You don't have to come. But if you do, I hope we can start a new chapter, even as friends. Dave. She sat still, heart pounding in her chest. It had been over 2 years since Dave left her, not just physically but emotionally crushed. And now, he was marrying the woman he left her for and inviting her to watch? She couldn't tell if it was arrogance or something else entirely. That night, she brought it up to Carla over dinner. What kind of man invites his ex-wife to his wedding to the woman he cheated with? Emily asked, half laughing, half bewildered. Carla leaned back. Maybe the kind of man who finally realizes what he lost. Emily thought for a moment. Should I go? Carla didn't answer. She just looked at her with that soft, wise stare. Depends. Do you want to? Emily sighed. I don't know, but I'm not afraid to. The day of the wedding arrived fast, October 13th. The morning air was crisp, the sky clear. Emily stood in front of her mirror, wearing a deep burgundy dress that hugged her shape with elegance and ease. Her waist had returned, her posture was strong, her skin glowed with real health, and her eyes carried a calm wealth that no dress could buy. At 3 o'clock sharp, she walked into the pavilion. Heads turned, some stared, a few mouths fell open. Dave's sister whispered, "Is that Emily?" Yes, it was. Not the Emily who begged, not the Emily who cried alone in the kitchen. This Emily was walking with confidence, her chin lifted, her stride slow and deliberate. When Dave saw her standing near the back row, he froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. Madison walked in moments later, radiant, thin, polished. And yet Emily didn't feel envy. Not anymore. There was no comparison left to make. They were on separate journeys, and Emily's was hers alone. The ceremony moved quickly. Vows were exchanged. Rings were slipped on fingers. Applause filled the air. Then, as guests began to move to the reception area, Dave made his way toward her. "Emily," he said, clearing his throat. She turned to him, serene. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I wasn't either," she replied. He looked around, nervous. "You look really good." She smiled. "I feel good. That matters more." He hesitated. "I meant what I said about being proud of you." Emily nodded. "Thank you. I worked hard for this. Not just the weight, the peace, the prosperity." There was a pause. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed?" he asked softly. Emily looked him in the eyes. "You would have kept me small, and I was meant for more." He said nothing. She added, "But I hope you're happy, really. I mean that." And she did. Because revenge wasn't silence or anger anymore. It was standing in front of the man who discarded her, and feeling absolutely whole without him. She left the reception early, walking out into the chilly October air. Leaves crunched under her heels as she made her way to the car. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just felt free. And freedom, she thought, was the most valuable kind of riches there was. By late October, Peoria was wrapped in cool air and golden leaves. Mornings came slower. The sunlight was softer. Emily stood on her porch one Sunday morning, a cup of coffee in hand, wrapped in a thick gray sweater, watching the world she'd rebuilt one day at a time. It had been over 2 years since she hit rock bottom. Since the man she loved walked out. Since she weighed 278 lbs, hiding behind oversized hoodies and invisible pain. Now, she stood at 168 lbs, strong, steady, not chasing thin, but living well. Her health was balanced, her mind at peace, her life rich in the kind of wealth that couldn't be seen, but deeply felt. The boys were getting older. Jordan had just turned 11. Miles was 9. They were thriving, confident, kind. They saw their mom as the strongest woman they knew. Not because she looked different, but because she was different. She showed up. She held her ground. She never gave up. That afternoon, Emily hosted a small gathering in her backyard. A mix of women from the wellness group, bookstore friends, neighbors, even Carla. They brought food, stories, laughter. There were no speeches, no spotlights, just warmth, real connection. As the sun began to set, Carla pulled Emily aside. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if Dave hadn't left?" Emily smiled. "Sometimes, but honestly, if he hadn't, I don't know if I'd have found myself." Carla nodded. "He thought he was choosing a better life, but you're the one who found prosperity." "I found peace," Emily said softly. "That's the real riches." A few days later, Emily received an offer to turn her story into a book. An honest, raw account of what it means to be broken and still rise. Not some picture-perfect journey, but the truth. The ugly, the beautiful, the real. She didn't say yes right away. She took a walk first, through the same streets where she used to feel too big to be seen. Past the diner where Janice first complimented her glow. Past the bookstore that became her sanctuary. Past the river where she once sat and cried, not knowing if she'd make it through another day. Now, she walked those streets like they were hers. Because they were. When she got back home, she sat at the kitchen table and wrote her response. "Yes, I'll tell my story, not because I want praise, but because someone out there is sitting in the dark thinking they're alone, and they're not." And just like that, the next chapter of her life began. Not as a woman scorned, but as a woman reborn, free, grounded, whole. A woman who used pain as fuel, who turned shame into strength, who didn't just lose 110 lbs, she lost the weight of everyone else's expectations and found her own values. And in the end, that was the sweetest kind of revenge, not to make them sorry, but to no longer care if they were. Because she had found what truly mattered: health, peace, self-worth, and more than anything, a life of her own design. And you? Have you ever lived something like this? Drop a comment below. I'd really love to hear your story.